King Edward IV, one of England's most compelling monarchs, reigned during a tumultuous period marked by civil strife and political machinations known as the Wars of the Roses. His rise to power, characterized by decisive battles and strategic marriages, not only shaped the course of English history but also established a legacy that influenced the nation long after his death. This essay delves into the life and reign of Edward IV, exploring his early years, ascent to the throne, governance, personal life, and lasting impact on the English monarchy. Edward IV's story is one of resilience and ambition. Born into the Yorkist faction at a time when England was torn between rival claims to the throne, Edward navigated a perilous landscape of shifting allegiances and bloody conflicts. His reign saw significant administrative reforms and efforts to stabilize the kingdom, although it was also marked by controversy and rebellion. By examining Edward's life in detail, we gain insights into the complexities of medieval kingship and the enduring influence of his rule. Early life and background. Edward IV was born on April 28, 1442, at Rouen in Normandy, France, to Richard Plantagenet, Duke of York, and Cecily Neville. His father, a leading figure in the Yorkist faction, held a strong claim to the English throne, while his mother came from the powerful Neville family, which played a crucial role in the political dynamics of the period. Edward's early years were shaped by the ongoing conflict between the House of York and the House of Lancaster, a struggle for the English crown that would later be known as the Wars of the Roses. This dynastic feud, characterized by its emblematic red and white roses, created a backdrop of instability and conflict that deeply influenced Edward's upbringing and future ambitions. Educated primarily by his mother and private tutors, Edward received a comprehensive education typical of nobility during the period. He was trained in the arts of war and chivalry, preparing him for the military and leadership roles he would later assume. His physical stature and martial prowess became well known, contributing to his reputation as a formidable warrior and leader. In addition to martial training, Edward was exposed to the complexities of political strategy and governance from a young age. His father's involvement in the political struggles of the time provided Edward with a first-hand understanding of the intricate and often dangerous nature of English politics. This early exposure would prove invaluable as he navigated his path to kingship. Edward's family background and early experiences set the stage for his eventual rise to power. As the eldest son of the Duke of York, he was positioned as a key figure in the Yorkist claim to the throne, and his future would be inextricably linked to the fortunes of his house. The combination of his noble lineage, physical prowess, and early education equipped him with the tools needed to pursue and ultimately secure the English crown. Rise to power. Edward IV's ascent to the throne was a dramatic and turbulent process, deeply intertwined with the broader context of the Wars of the Roses. This period of civil war, which pitted the Yorkist and Lancastrian factions against each other, created an environment ripe for political maneuvering and military confrontation. The political climate of England before Edward's reign was marked by discontent and factionalism. King Henry VI, the reigning monarch, faced widespread criticism for his perceived weakness and inability to effectively govern the kingdom. His bouts of mental illness further undermined his authority, leading to power struggles among the nobility. The Lancastrian regime's instability provided an opportunity for the Yorkist faction, led by Edward's father, Richard, Duke of York, to challenge the existing order. Key events leading to Edward's ascension to the throne included a series of battles and shifting alliances. The Duke of York's initial efforts to assert his claim culminated in the Battle of St. Albans in 1455, a conflict that marked the beginning of open hostilities between the two houses. Although Richard was killed at the Battle of Wakefield in 1460, his death galvanized Yorkist supporters, and his eldest son, Edward, took up the mantle of leadership. Edward's military acumen and charismatic leadership quickly became apparent. In a series of decisive engagements, he secured pivotal victories that solidified his position as a formidable contender for the throne. The Battle of Towton in 1461, one of the largest and bloodiest battles of the Wars of the Roses, was particularly significant. Edward's forces emerged victorious, and the outcome effectively ended Lancastrian resistance in the north of England. With the support of key allies, including Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, known as the Kingmaker, Edward was proclaimed king on March 4, 1461. His coronation marked the beginning of his first reign, though the conflict was far from over. Edward's rise to power was a testament to his strategic brilliance, martial skill, and the ability to inspire loyalty among his followers. It also underscored the volatile nature of the period, where fortunes could change rapidly and the throne was never entirely secure. First reign, 1461 to 1470. Edward IV's first reign was marked by his efforts to consolidate power and stabilize his newly acquired kingdom amidst ongoing conflicts and political challenges. This period was crucial in establishing his authority and implementing reforms that would shape his legacy. Initial challenges and consolidation of power. Upon ascending the throne, Edward IV faced numerous challenges. Although the Battle of Towton had significantly weakened Lancastrian resistance, pockets of support for the deposed Henry VI remained. Edward had to secure his position by quelling uprisings and securing loyalty from powerful nobles. One of Edward's early moves was to strengthen his position through strategic marriages and alliances. He married Elizabeth Woodville in 1464, a controversial choice given her status as a commoner and widow of a Lancastrian supporter. This marriage aimed to solidify internal support and brought the influential Woodville family into the Yorkist fold. However, it also alienated key allies such as the Earl of Warwick, who had hoped to arrange a more politically advantageous match for the king. To secure his reign, Edward embarked on a series of campaigns to eliminate remaining Lancastrian strongholds. Key victories, such as the Battle of Hexham in 1464, helped to consolidate Yorkist control. Edward also sought to undermine Lancastrian support by pardoning former enemies and restoring their lands, thus promoting a policy of reconciliation. Major battles and conflicts. Edward's first reign was punctuated by several significant battles and conflicts, reflecting the ongoing volatility of the period. One of the most notable confrontations was the Battle of Edgecote Moor in 1469, where Edward faced a rebellion led by the Earl of Warwick and Edward's own brother, George, Duke of Clarence. The rebellion stemmed from dissatisfaction with Edward's policies and his marriage to Elizabeth Woodville. Warwick, known as the Kingmaker, had been instrumental in Edward's rise to power but grew disillusioned with the king's increasing independence. The Battle of Edgecote Moor resulted in a defeat for Edward's forces, leading to his temporary capture. Although Edward managed to escape and regain control, this conflict highlighted the fragile nature of his reign and the internal divisions within the Yorkist camp. Political and administrative reforms. Despite these challenges, Edward IV implemented several political and administrative reforms aimed at strengthening the monarchy and improving governance. He focused on restoring law and order, which had deteriorated during the protracted civil wars. Edward took measures to enhance royal authority by curbing the power of overmighty subjects and ensuring loyalty through patronage and rewards. One of Edward's key reforms was the improvement of the royal finances. He took steps to increase crown revenues by streamlining tax collection and addressing corruption within the administration. Edward's financial acumen helped stabilize the economy and provided the resources necessary to maintain his military campaigns and court expenses. Edward also sought to modernize the administration of justice. He introduced more efficient legal procedures and strengthened the role of the King's Bench and other courts. These reforms were aimed at reducing corruption and ensuring that justice was administered fairly and consistently across the kingdom. Key figures in Edward's court. Edward IV's court was populated by a mix of loyal supporters and ambitious nobles, each playing a role in the administration and politics of the realm. Some of the key figures included Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick. Initially one of Edward's staunchest supporters, Warwick's eventual rebellion highlighted the complex dynamics of loyalty and ambition within the court. George, Duke of Clarence, Edward's brother, whose shifting allegiances and involvement in Warwick's rebellion created significant challenges for the king. Elizabeth Woodville, Edward's queen, whose marriage brought both advantages and conflicts. Her large family secured numerous influential positions, leading to tensions with other nobles. William, Lord Hastings, a trusted advisor and military commander, Hastings played a crucial role in Edward's administration and military campaigns. These individuals, along with others, contributed to the intricate web of alliances and rivalries that characterized Edward IV's first reign. Exile and restoration. Edward's first reign ended abruptly due to a combination of internal dissent and external pressures, leading to his temporary exile in 1470. This period of his life was marked by dramatic reversals of fortune, illustrating the unstable nature of 15th-century English politics. Despite these challenges, Edward's resilience and strategic acumen ultimately enabled his return to power. Circumstances leading to exile. The key catalyst for Edward IV's exile was the growing discontent among his former allies, particularly Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, and Edward's own brother, George, Duke of Clarence. Their dissatisfaction stemmed from Edward's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville and the subsequent rise of the Woodville family, which they perceived as a threat to their own influence. Warwick, initially a loyal supporter who had played a crucial role in Edward's ascent to the throne, felt increasingly marginalized. His resentment was exacerbated by Edward's refusal to support a proposed marriage alliance between Warwick's daughter and the French royal family, which Edward rejected in favor of a Burgundian alliance. The breakdown in relations culminated in Warwick and Clarence joining forces against Edward, leveraging their combined military and political clout to challenge the king. In 1470, Warwick and Clarence launched a rebellion, forcing Edward to flee England. Edward sought refuge in Burgundy, where he garnered support from Charles the Bold, Duke of Burgundy. The Duke's assistance was instrumental in providing Edward with the resources needed to mount a counteroffensive. Life in exile. During his exile, Edward IV faced the dual challenges of maintaining his legitimacy as the rightful king of England and securing the necessary support to reclaim his throne. His time in Burgundy was spent garnering political and financial backing from his brother-in-law, Charles the Bold. This alliance proved pivotal, as Burgundy's resources enabled Edward to prepare a military expedition to retake his kingdom. Edward's charisma and diplomatic skills were crucial during this period. He managed to secure the loyalty of key Yorkist supporters who had initially wavered, including his younger brother, Richard, Duke of Gloucester. Edward's ability to inspire confidence in his cause and rally supporters highlighted his strengths as a leader. Before we wrap up, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel in order to explore more about medieval history. Check out our other videos on the channel or share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. We love hearing from you. Thanks for joining us on this journey through time. Stay curious and keep exploring. Key events leading to restoration. Edward IV's restoration to the throne was marked by a series of decisive military and political maneuvers. In March 1471, Edward landed in England with a small force, quickly gaining support as he marched through the country. His return was facilitated by widespread discontent with the Lancastrian regime, which had been restored under Henry VI during Edward's exile. The turning point came with the Battle of Barnet on April 14, 1471. Edward's forces clashed with those of Warwick in a fog-shrouded conflict that resulted in a decisive Yorkist victory. Warwick, the formidable kingmaker, was killed in battle, effectively ending the immediate threat to Edward's rule. Following the victory at Barnet, Edward moved swiftly to confront the remaining Lancastrian forces. The Battle of Tewkesbury, fought on May 4, 1471, saw Edward decisively defeat the Lancastrians, effectively quashing their resistance. The capture and subsequent execution of key Lancastrian leaders, including the young Prince Edward of Westminster, solidified Edward's restored authority. With the Lancastrian threat neutralized, Edward IV re-entered London, where he was formally restored to the throne. His return marked the beginning of his second reign, characterized by a renewed focus on consolidating power and securing his dynasty's future. Second reign, 1471 to 1483. Edward IV's second reign, from 1471 until his death in 1483, was marked by a period of relative stability and consolidation. Having overcome the immediate threats to his rule, Edward focused on strengthening his government, improving the economy, and securing his dynasty's future. This period also saw important developments in both domestic and foreign policy, re-establishing control over England. After his restoration, Edward IV moved swiftly to consolidate his power and secure his position as king. He took measures to eliminate remaining Lancastrian threats and ensure loyalty among the nobility. Edward's approach was multifaceted, involving both military actions and strategic political maneuvers. One of Edward's first actions was to secure the capital, London, and reassert his authority over the government and the nobility. He worked to restore order and stability, which had been severely disrupted during the civil wars. Edward's strong leadership and effective administration helped to stabilize the kingdom and reduce the likelihood of further rebellions. To ensure loyalty among the nobility, Edward implemented a policy of patronage, rewarding his supporters with lands, titles, and positions at court. This strategy not only secured the loyalty of powerful nobles, but also helped to integrate them into his government, reducing the likelihood of opposition. Key figures in Edward's court, such as his brother Richard, Duke of Gloucester, and William, Lord Hastings, played crucial roles in maintaining the stability of his reign. Domestic policies and governance. Edward IV's domestic policies focused on restoring law and order, improving the economy, and enhancing the efficiency of the administration. His efforts in these areas contributed to the relative stability and prosperity of his second reign. One of Edward's key domestic initiatives was the restoration of law and order. He sought to curb the power of overmighty subjects and ensure that justice was administered fairly and consistently. Edward reformed the judicial system, strengthening the role of the King's Bench and other courts, and took measures to reduce corruption and improve the administration of justice. Edward also focused on improving the economy. He implemented measures to increase crown revenues, streamline tax collection, and address financial mismanagement. Edward's financial reforms helped to stabilize the economy and provided the resources necessary to maintain his court and fund his military campaigns. In addition to these reforms, Edward worked to enhance the efficiency of the government. He improved the organization and functioning of the royal council, ensuring that it operated more effectively. Edward also sought to reduce the influence of powerful noble factions and promote capable administrators and officials who were loyal to him. Foreign policy and relations with other nations. Edward IV's foreign policy was characterized by a mix of diplomacy and military action, aimed at securing England's interests and enhancing its position in Europe. His key objectives included securing alliances, protecting trade interests, and asserting English influence on the continent. One of Edward's major foreign policy achievements was the negotiation of the Treaty of Picquigny with Louis XI of France in 1475. This treaty ended a period of hostilities between England and France and provided for a substantial pension to be paid to Edward in exchange for renouncing his claims to the French throne. The Treaty of Picquigny was a significant diplomatic success, as it secured peace with France and provided much-needed financial resources. Edward also sought to strengthen England's ties with Burgundy, a key ally in his efforts to counter French influence. His sister, Margaret of York, was married to Charles the Bold, Duke of Burgundy, solidifying this important alliance. Edward's relationship with Burgundy helped to protect English trade interests and provided a valuable counterbalance to French power. In addition to these alliances, Edward pursued a policy of active engagement in European affairs. He supported various military and diplomatic initiatives aimed at protecting English interests and enhancing its influence. Edward's foreign policy was marked by a pragmatic approach, balancing military action with strategic alliances and negotiations. Major conflicts and their resolutions. While Edward IV's second reign was generally more stable than his first, it was not without conflicts and challenges. Edward faced several significant threats, both internal and external, which he successfully navigated through a combination of military action and political maneuvering. One of the major conflicts during this period was the ongoing threat from the Lancastrian faction. Although the Lancastrian cause had been largely defeated, pockets of resistance remained. Edward took decisive action to eliminate these threats, including the capture and execution of Henry VI, which effectively ended the Lancastrian claim to the throne. Edward also faced challenges from within his own family. His brother, George, Duke of Clarence, who had previously allied with Warwick against Edward, continued to be a source of instability. Clarence's ambitions and erratic behavior ultimately led to his downfall. In 1478, Edward had Clarence arrested, tried, and executed for treason, removing a significant internal threat to his rule. Externally, Edward faced ongoing tensions with Scotland. He conducted several military campaigns to assert English influence and protect the northern border. Edward's efforts in Scotland were part of a broader strategy to secure England's borders and maintain stability in the region. Personal life and character. Edward IV's personal life and character played a significant role in shaping his reign and legacy. His marriage to Elizabeth Woodville, his relationships with family and courtiers, and his personality traits all influenced his rule and the stability of his kingdom. Marriage and family. Edward IV's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville was both a romantic and political turning point in his life. Elizabeth, the widow of a Lancastrian supporter, was of relatively modest noble birth compared to Edward. Their marriage in 1464 was controversial and caused a significant rift within Edward's court, particularly with Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, who had hoped to arrange a more advantageous match for Edward. Elizabeth Woodville's influence grew considerably after her marriage to Edward. She was crowned queen in 1465, and her large family quickly rose to prominence, securing key positions and advantageous marriages. The elevation of the Woodvilles caused resentment among the established nobility, leading to political tensions and contributing to the instability that marked Edward's reign. Despite the controversies, Edward and Elizabeth had a large family. They had 10 children, though only 7 survived infancy. Their children included Elizabeth of York, who would later marry Henry VII, uniting the warring houses of York and Lancaster and founding the Tudor dynasty. Edward's sons, Edward V and Richard of Shrewsbury, Duke of York, became central figures in the tragic story of the Princes in the Tower. Personal traits and leadership style. Edward IV was known for his imposing physical presence and charismatic personality. Standing over 6 feet tall, he was a commanding figure who inspired loyalty and admiration among his followers. His physical prowess and skills as a warrior were well documented, contributing to his reputation as a formidable military leader. Edward's leadership style combined decisiveness with pragmatism. He was capable of making bold and swift decisions, particularly in matters of war and governance. His ability to adapt to changing circumstances and his willingness to compromise when necessary were key factors in his success as a ruler. Despite his strengths, Edward's reign was not without flaws. His favoritism towards the Woodville family created significant political divisions, and his sometimes impulsive decisions led to conflicts with powerful nobles. Additionally, Edward's indulgent lifestyle and penchant for luxury sometimes strained the royal finances and led to criticism. Before we wrap up, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel in order to explore more about medieval history. Check out our other videos on the channel or share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. We love hearing from you. Thanks for joining us on this journey through time. Stay curious and keep exploring. Influence on culture and society. Edward IV's reign had a notable impact on English culture and society. His court became a center of patronage and artistic endeavor, reflecting the broader trends of the Renaissance that were beginning to influence England. Edward's support for the arts and his interest in architecture and building projects left a lasting legacy. One of Edward's most significant contributions to cultural life was the construction of several important buildings and structures. He invested in the rebuilding of St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle, which became a prominent example of late Gothic architecture. Edward also initiated the construction of Eltham Palace, which showcased the luxurious tastes of his court. Edward's reign saw the growth of the English economy and the expansion of trade, particularly with Burgundy and other European powers. His policies helped to promote economic stability and growth, benefiting the mercantile and manufacturing sectors. This period of relative prosperity contributed to the flourishing of culture and the arts. In addition to his patronage of the arts, Edward was also known for his interest in chivalric ideals and the promotion of knighthood. He revived the Order of the Garter, enhancing its prestige and using it as a tool for rewarding loyalty and service. Edward's promotion of chivalric values and ceremonies helped to reinforce the social hierarchy and the ideals of knighthood. Death and succession. Edward IV's unexpected death in 1483 set off a chain of events that plunged England into political turmoil and led to one of the most famous succession crises in English history. His death left the throne to his young son, Edward V, and opened the way for the rise of Richard III. Circumstances of Edward IV's death. Edward IV died on April 9, 1483, at the age of 40. The exact cause of his death remains unclear, though contemporary accounts suggest he may have succumbed to illness, possibly pneumonia or typhoid. Some historians speculate that his indulgent lifestyle, marked by feasting and drinking, may have contributed to his early demise. Edward's death came as a shock to the nation. At the time of his passing, Edward was in relatively good health and actively engaged in the governance of his kingdom. His sudden death left a power vacuum and created uncertainty about the future of the Yorkist dynasty. Immediate impact on England. The immediate impact of Edward IV's death was profound. He left behind a kingdom that, while more stable than when he first ascended the throne, was still vulnerable to political intrigue and factionalism. Edward's eldest son and heir, Edward V, was only 12 years old at the time, too young to rule independently. To manage the transition, Edward IV had appointed his brother Richard, Duke of Gloucester, as Lord Protector, a role intended to safeguard the young king and maintain stability until Edward V reached maturity. However, this arrangement quickly unraveled as competing factions within the court sought to exert their influence. Succession crisis. The succession crisis that followed Edward IV's death was marked by rapid and dramatic developments. Initially, Edward V was to be crowned king, and he traveled to London from Ludlow Castle, where he had been residing. However, on his way to the capital, Edward V and his younger brother, Richard, Duke of York, were intercepted by Richard, Duke of Gloucester. Richard, backed by a faction of nobles including Henry Stafford, Duke of Buckingham, took control of the young king and his brother, ostensibly to protect them from potential threats. Edward V was housed in the Tower of London, a traditional residence for monarchs awaiting coronation. However, the situation quickly took a darker turn. On June 22, 1483, Richard declared that Edward IV's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville had been invalid, rendering their children illegitimate. This claim was based on the pretext of a pre-contract of marriage between Edward IV and Lady Eleanor Butler, which, if true, would have invalidated his subsequent marriage to Elizabeth Woodville. Richard's declaration was supported by an assembly of lords and commoners, and he was proclaimed king as Richard III on June 26, 1483. The young princes, Edward V and Richard of Shrewsbury, disappeared from public view while confined in the Tower of London. Their fate remains one of the greatest mysteries in English history, with most historians believing they were murdered, possibly on Richard III's orders, to eliminate any potential threats to his claim to the throne. Legacy of the succession crisis. The succession crisis and Richard III's usurpation had significant and far-reaching consequences. Richard III's reign was immediately controversial, and his seizure of the throne was viewed by many as illegitimate. This perception fueled opposition to his rule and contributed to the instability that characterized his brief reign. The disappearance and presumed murder of the princes in the Tower cast a long shadow over Richard III's reputation. These events undermined his credibility and provided a powerful rallying point for his enemies. The uncertainty and unrest created by the succession crisis ultimately set the stage for the rise of Henry Tudor, who would challenge Richard III and bring an end to the Wars of the Roses. In 1485, Henry Tudor defeated Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth Field, effectively ending the Yorkist claim to the throne. Henry's victory marked the beginning of the Tudor dynasty and a new chapter in English history. He married Elizabeth of York, Edward IV's daughter, uniting the warring houses of York and Lancaster and symbolically ending the dynastic conflict. Legacy. Edward IV's legacy is multifaceted, encompassing his impact on the English monarchy and politics, his contributions to culture and society, and the way he is perceived in historiography and popular culture. Despite the turbulence of his reign, Edward's influence extended beyond his lifetime, shaping the course of English history in significant ways. Long-term impact on the English monarchy and politics. Edward IV's reign had a profound and lasting impact on the English monarchy and the political landscape of the country. Several key aspects of his legacy can be identified. Strengthening of the monarchy. Edward IV's efforts to consolidate royal authority and restore law and order helped to strengthen the monarchy after a period of civil strife. His administrative reforms and efforts to curb the power of overmighty subjects laid the groundwork for a more centralized and efficient government. This consolidation of royal power provided a foundation for future monarchs to build upon. Economic reforms. Edward's financial acumen and economic reforms contributed to the stabilization and growth of the English economy. His efforts to increase crown revenues and improve fiscal management helped to ensure the financial stability of the monarchy. This economic foundation was crucial for the continued development of trade and commerce in England. Dynastic stability. Although his sudden death and the subsequent succession crisis threatened the stability of the Yorkist dynasty, Edward's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville and their numerous children ensured the continuation of his bloodline. The marriage of his daughter, Elizabeth of York, to Henry VII ultimately united the warring houses of York and Lancaster, establishing the Tudor dynasty and bringing an end to the Wars of the Roses. Military achievements. Edward's military prowess and strategic acumen were demonstrated in his numerous victories during the Wars of the Roses. His successes on the battlefield not only secured his own reign, but also shaped the course of English military history. The tactics and strategies employed by Edward influenced subsequent military leaders and campaigns. Historiographical perspectives. Historians have offered varying perspectives on Edward IV's reign, reflecting the complexities and contradictions of his rule. Some key historiographical views include effective monarch. Many historians view Edward IV as an effective and capable monarch who managed to restore stability and strengthen the monarchy after a period of chaos. His administrative and economic reforms are often highlighted as significant achievements that had a lasting impact on the governance of England. Controversial decisions. Edward's controversial decisions, such as his marriage to Elizabeth Woodville and his handling of the succession, have been the subject of considerable debate. Some historians criticize these decisions for creating political tensions and contributing to the instability of his reign. Others argue that these choices were pragmatic responses to the challenges he faced. Charismatic leader. Edward's charisma and leadership qualities are frequently emphasized in historical accounts. His ability to inspire loyalty and command respect played a crucial role in his success as a ruler. However, his reliance on personal relationships and favoritism also created divisions and rivalries within his court. Mixed legacy. Overall, Edward IV's legacy is seen as mixed, combining significant achievements with notable controversies. His reign is often characterized as a period of transition, marking the end of the medieval era and the beginning of the early modern period in English history. Edward IV in popular culture. Edward IV's life and reign have been depicted in various forms of popular culture, including literature, drama, and film. These portrayals reflect the enduring fascination with his character and the dramatic events of his time. Shakespeare's plays. Edward IV is a prominent character in William Shakespeare's history plays, particularly Henry VI, Part 3, and Richard III. Shakespeare's portrayal of Edward highlights his military prowess and charisma, as well as the political intrigues and conflicts of his reign. These plays have significantly shaped public perceptions of Edward and the Wars of the Roses. Historical novels. Edward IV has been featured in numerous historical novels that explore his life and times. Authors such as Philippa Gregory, in her Cousins' War series, and Sharon K. Penman have brought Edward's story to life through fiction. These novels often focus on the personal and political dramas of his reign, offering readers a vivid glimpse into the past. Television and film. Edward IV has been portrayed in various television series and films, including adaptations of Shakespeare's plays and historical dramas about the Wars of the Roses. These portrayals have contributed to the popular image of Edward as a charismatic and complex figure. Documentaries. Edward IV's reign has been the subject of numerous documentaries that explore the historical context and key events of his time. These documentaries often draw on the latest historical research to provide a comprehensive and nuanced view of his life and legacy. Conclusion. King Edward IV's life and reign were marked by dramatic events, significant achievements, and enduring controversies. His rise to power during the Wars of the Roses, his efforts to consolidate and strengthen the monarchy, and his contributions to English culture and society all left a lasting legacy. Despite the challenges and conflicts he faced, Edward IV's impact on English history is undeniable. Edward's ability to navigate the turbulent political landscape of his time His military successes and his administrative reforms helped to stabilize England and set the stage for future developments. His marriage to Elizabeth Woodville and the subsequent unification of the houses of York and Lancaster through their daughter, Elizabeth of York, played a crucial role in ending the dynastic conflict and establishing the Tudor dynasty. While historians continue to debate the complexities of his reign, Edward IV remains a compelling figure whose story continues to captivate and inspire. His legacy, both in terms of his direct contributions and the long-term effects of his rule, highlights the dynamic and transformative nature of English history during the late medieval period. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Medieval Chronicles 1066. See you next time.